Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to In Time. Yeah, there's a bit of a hissing sound. I'll get on that in just a second. I do apologize. Thank you for joining us for Overtime. With me today is Vox Puberis. I can't. Is it Puberis? Yeah, it's because E Puberis Unum, right?
Publius.
Oh, God. All right. And no music. Okay, do not. Yeah, okay. So once again, we just stick with the in time overface and not the overtime. Everyone does have audio, though. Is that correct? You guys can. Yeah, okay. So, and I can deal with that hissing sound in just a second. So, thank you for joining us. It is 10 days before the U.S. election, and I have to tell you, it's going to be an interesting one. Americans are more divided than at any other time since the U.S. Civil War, and I'm a part of that divide. I have very strong opinions in one direction over another. I think most of us do in one way or another. But one of the interesting things is it's gotten bad enough where we're starting to see significant violence in one way or another. Part of it is the riots and the protests that we're seeing. Part of it is threats of violence. Reports of voter intimidation, either through emails at the polls, and even a spat of kidnapping plots against political figures and assassination plots. Everyone from the governor of, I want to say, Michigan, and all the way up through presidential candidate Joe Biden. So, Vox, now you actually have been living in South Africa and then have moved to the United States reasonably recently. Is that correct?
Well, I'm from South Africa. I've been here for quite some time, though.
Oh.
In the southeastern United States.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you were recent, I was going to be like, you picked one hell of a time to come here, but I guess you've been here for a while.
Well, I tell you what, it's almost oh, I tell you what it feels like. It feels like I left the country just to come back to a country that's getting ready to set apartheid.
Yeah. Um, oh, I think there's going to be an underground railroad to Canada coming up soon, especially if Trump wins again.
Yeah, mass exodus to New Zealand. I'm there with you.
All right. Well, let's cover a couple of sort of smaller things real quick. COVID rates. Well, this is smaller. Everybody hears about COVID all the time. We're not going to be doing COVID too much today, but COVID rates are on the rise again. 38 states in the union are experiencing significant increases. However, while Utah and Georgia are both experiencing a number of hospitals that have reached or exceeded capacity, something new has happened, which is that a new study has found that patients who are hospitalized with COVID, with life-threatening conditions, that had previously had a 25.6% mortality rate, that was the average mortality rate. Sorry, that was the mortality rate for patients hospitalized with serious COVID. That mortality rate has dropped to 7.6%. Still high, still higher than the common cold, still higher than the flu, but it's a significant improvement. And this study cites remdesivir as well as a number of other treatment protocols addressing or starting treatment sooner and better procedures once people are actually in the hospital and understanding how to give support to patients with COVID. They've cited these things as a reason that the mortality rates have gone down. This is one reason why, however, you don't want to overwhelm hospitals. We have to manage the number of people who are getting it. Just because it's more survivable now, that's only when the system is operating. The system stops operating when too many people get it too quickly. That's why masks are still important. That's why social distancing is still extraordinarily important. Have you experienced what have you seen, Vox, in terms of, like, I mean, people the only one I had a short while ago was at the post office. Somebody flipped out and said, "I'm going to report you to the governor. You didn't let me come in here without a mask on." It's like, it's the governor who said he needs a vote, dear Lord.
Well, so we have up until recently not had a big bout of anything. And so no one here really took it seriously. Even in the midst of all the rises, I would go out and I would see people and they would be out without their masks on, and that really hasn't changed. As of last week, we were the only area that had an official outbreak, I believe, or a hot spot. I think that's where you have 5 or more outbreaks that have been traced to 5 or more people that have been infected and traced to one specific area. And yet it just doesn't seem as though people take it seriously. You know, I wear my mask. You know, they can be quite fashionable. I don't understand why people have a problem with this. It's almost like Ayn Rand is just attempting to kill people. That's what this feels like. It's just there's this misguided and misunderstanding of what it means to have freedom. Mm-hmm. You know, oh, I'm not going to wear my mask because freedom. And you know, that's basically what we've got around here. And I haven't seen anybody flip out, but it's just blown my mind how many people just go around without the masks on, without a care in the world, it seems. And we have a very, very, very old population where I'm at. Above 65 is the largest population in my area. So it just bothers me, the banality that people have towards this.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a misconception, too, that masks are to help yourself. Ergo, if you decide you want to be free and not wear one, you can go right ahead because, hey, it's your life that you're endangering. But, of course, that's not. Masks really don't help you very much at all. They help stop the spread. They help save other lives. So, yeah, I think there's been a failure of communication as to the importance of masks and the importance of social distancing, and I do lament, you know, when there was any kind of national health crisis with the Obama administration, you know, it did come out and say, okay, this is what you got to do. You know, you got to wash your hands. You got to follow all these. It's got to be a bit like, you know, you feel like you're talking to kids, like, all right, Americans, remember to wash your hands, and remember. But on the flip side, you know, that's what fucking leadership is. All right. Yeah. So.
Well, that's
yeah.
Right there, isn't it? It's about leadership, right? When we have the government that we have right now, that just out of hand rejects science, rejects logic, rejects reason. When our leader is making fun of people for wearing masks, when our leader has contracted this disease and comes back and says, it's nothing, you know, I had the best care that's available to any person on the face of the earth with the best doctors, but it's nothing. And you know, his followers take cues from him, just like we take cues from our role models and leaders and things like that. And so, you know, when people say this, that the Trump administration is responsible for the deaths of, you know, 225,000 people, with possibly 200,000 more to follow by the end of the year, they're absolutely correct, and it's just because of their irresponsible actions. And if we do not hold them, you know, responsible for their actions, well, may history hold us responsible for our inaction.
Well, I think they said that 90% of the deaths could have been prevented if Trump had done a mask. Let's drop the economy, worrying about the economy. Okay, fine. We won't close anything. Everything will be just run as normal. If everybody just started wearing masks and really followed masks and social distancing from day one, 90%. I think, according to the CDC, 90% of these deaths could have been prevented. That's a staggering. So I do think you're being unfair to Trump, because there is 10% of that number that would have died anyway, Vox, and I think that was just a gross mischaracterization.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just kind of a little ashamed to be broadcasting with you right now. Just, you know, you were 90% there.
I will write a personal apology to Donald Trump. I do apologize. You know, there's an interesting argument that's been made recently, and I always like it when situations, no matter how morbid or happy they may be, breathe new life into our Constitution. arguments, and there's been an interesting argument made by a group of constitutional lawyers recently that the Constitution has built into it pandemic protections.
Yeah.
The Third Amendment, which is an amendment that no one ever thinks about anymore except on your ninth grade social studies exam, was kind of brought up in the mix of smallpox. So the Third Amendment that troops cannot be quartered in private homes. And the reason that particular law was passed, because when King George kept sending his troops over here and quartering in private homes, they kept bringing the smallpox with them.
Oh.
And the citizens of this country did not want to have to deal with smallpox. So the Third Amendment to the Constitution of the United States was created in large part to prevent the spread of a viral pathogen through the citizenry of the United States. It could be something that the Trump administration could have looked into for a mask mandate that would have been constitutionally verifiable. But, such as we go.
Well, we actually do have states can also actually do it for, and there's the Constitution's recognized states are allowed to do things like that for, and I think that's in I forget where in the Constitution, but they can inhibit commerce, they can inhibit any number of personal freedoms so long as it's done in the name of public health. And it's been a while since I looked that one up, but there is constitutional precedent for all of this. I was going to get into because President Trump's Twitter account was hacked by a Dutch hacker, a white hat hacker who hacked it. So you were talking about his Twitter, and it's we have screenshots now from the inside of the account. So we just did thank you, Trump. Why don't you change your profile? You could do this to make your, it's the whole. It's his. Apparently, whatever his password was, it was really easy to guess. There was no two-factor authentication at all. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, dear Lord!
This is the second time that man has gotten into Trump's account. He got into it in 2016 when Trump's password was "You're fired."
That was the same guy. I remember that. Oh, dear Lord!
Same guy.
Okay,
yes, they're very creative over there with their passwords. This is our national security right here, folks.
Well, it's not just that. No, it's not just that. I wish it was just that, but keep in mind that his Twitter feed has now been declared a official outlet of the White House. That's why they can't censor what he says on that feed. So I think they've taken to doing the fact checking on it and saying, okay, we'll get the facts, but they can't actually censor it because it's currently official White House correspondence. So if you hack the thing, it's basically you're speaking for the country. So he could just come out and say, okay, from now on, all Burger Kings will be called Wendy's, and all, I just, oh my God. That guy could have had a lot of fun. Everybody's lucky he's apparently a real white hat. He didn't even want to just do something humorous. He was just like, okay, I got it. Just as a reminder, for those of you who are sleeping soundly each and every night, Donald Trump does have the nuclear codes. Hopefully not on Twitter, and hopefully they don't have the same password. So you had mentioned this earlier too. No, you and I were talking about this. Pope Francis has now said that civil unions are okay, and he's pushing for civil unions. Now, I don't know entirely what this means in terms of, I don't think he'd say that the church could perform civil unions. He reiterated he's not against gay love. Gay love is great. He's all for gay love. Love is love. Gay people are members of the family, all this other stuff. It's just gay sex that's a problem. So if you're gay, be as gay as you like, just don't have sex with anyone. So that makes it all better, I guess. That's his complaint. Civil unions. What are your thoughts? Oh, you there? Right. Let's just quickly check the connection with Vox here. Oh, we may have lost Vox. Let's see if we can. Oh, Vox hung up on us. All right, we're gonna when we get Vox back, we're gonna have to give Vox a real Vox hung up on. I can't even.
I am so bad with this technology. That was, oh my goodness. I knew I was going to do that because I've been self-muting my microphone so you don't hear the crickets in the background, and I knew I was going to do that.
Oh, so well, no worries. I've been known to hit the wrong button once or twice. There's a reason they call me Nick the Muter Soutter. At any rate, so what are your thoughts on Pope Francis? Well, now we don't need. I said a few minutes ago. I said if you fully support the Catholic Church in all its endeavors, please just indicate by being silent and saying nothing. So we have your opinion. Where silence implies consent, it's a legal concept. We're good.
I personally, as much as any, be a fan of that institution, I am a fan of Pope Francis. And he has obviously caused quite a bit of a stir. Now, I'm a little bit off on the timeline. It sounds like there were comments made in an interview he gave in Mexico. And then the Vatican, which were responsible for the filming of this documentary, edited out his comment in support of civil union, and he kind of come out and said, "Hey, I support this." And so they, it's like they just kicked their own self in the mouth, because obviously he was going to be like, "Well, where is my comment about this?" And it's interesting to see the pushback here, because he didn't come out and say that Christ approves of anything. He didn't. He basically is saying all people are welcome in the church regardless of their sexuality, and all people are deserving of basic dignity and the capacity to exist legally in society. And the fact that causes a almost a schism is mind-blowing to me. Cardinal Raymond Burke, who has been probably Pope Francis's most vocal critic, basically came out and said that the Cardinal has absolutely no magisterial weight behind these comments, and that his comments have caused great bewilderment and confusion amongst the Catholic faithful. And if American Catholics are anything like the rest of the world, the laity of the Catholic Church does not seem to care about these things near as much as the papacy does.
I think that's an interesting observation. I do kind of like Pope Francis. I get a lot of blowback when I say that. I do kind of like him. He's certainly not as far left as I'd like him to be, but he's further left than just about any pope I've seen in a while, at least, especially relative to just where the institution is. He came out early on and it said, well, you don't need to be Catholic to go to heaven, which because the obvious, I think that any genuine religion would have to say, look, it's about what's in your heart, not what what you do, not which religion you profess. And he basically said something to that effect. The problem is then people say, well, why do I have to be Catholic? Especially when there's so many other downsides to being Catholic. Why not just, why even attend church at all? So that's why that kind of thing has always been discouraged. He came out and said it. He did walk it back. But after there was a lot of pushback from bishops and cardinals. But it does seem to me that the church, nonetheless, as much as I like him and as much as I think he's been reasonably progressive, and it's nice to finally see that, the pattern that I've noticed is that the church leads from behind. So right now, one of the things I said, and you're right, I don't have all the details. He had said it in an interview, and then I didn't realize that hadn't gone out in the original interview, but he had said it in an interview, and he certainly expected that it would come out. And he had the church. So he had said that it's because we care about human rights and all this. It's been my experience that most Catholics I meet, most Christians I meet will tell you, well, Christians are always at the forefront of human rights, and Christians are always, for, well, the church, people pick their religion. The religion doesn't pick them. If you're a Catholic and you decide Catholics are doing things in what you view to be the wrong way, now you're not God, but you make that decision nonetheless. And you sit there and say, you know what, I think these doctrines don't make a lot of sense to me, but the Protestants have it right. You become a Protestant. If you don't agree with the Protestants, you become a Seventh-day Adventist or a Calvinist or a Lutheran or whatever, and you move on and you pick the denomination that suits your beliefs. So if the Catholic Church wants to keep people in the pews and keep paying for rather expensive churches, they have to make sure that people don't go off to the other options. If people start going off to the other options, they start to say, well, what is it we're doing wrong? And that's usually when you start to see change in the church, and that's when you usually start to see them following other people's rights. So all of the rights that have been sort of recently acknowledged by Catholics, including the fact that, hey, gays have a right to exist, which they didn't acknowledge until a short while ago. All of those rights came after society as a whole said, no, these are human rights and we're not really going to accept any bullshit otherwise. And then the Catholic Church starts fighting for those rights. And they start saying, we must love homosexuals as we love everybody else. Well, thanks for that. It's nice to see you coming around to that position a couple hundred years late. And that was the same thing with slavery. The Catholic Church does actually, it actively roots out slavery in other countries. And the Catholic Church is a fierce opponent of slavery. But they were the ones that held on to slavery some of the longest. They were for the U.S. holding on to slavery for an extended period of time. And a number of Christians in particular fought the repeal of slavery in the United States. Then once it gets repealed, they run around, start fighting for the repeal of slavery in other countries. It's lead from behind. It's, sinister porpoise. Let's see. Too bad Francis is still wrong. 9N trans issues. I have zero doubt in my mind.
I mean, what can you really expect from the church? I mean, I think we do have to cut the church a little slack. When we have a conversation about human rights, it's right here in the right now, and it impacts us. But the church has to wait to receive its messages through supernatural telephone, and that's a long, long way for those messages to travel. So, I mean, God is obviously not bound by time, but he doesn't really understand time very well. So, maybe he meant to say gays could have civil marriages right after the death of Jesus. But that supernatural phone just, wasn't working correctly.
So, well, I'm just trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out. So, light travels at the speed of light, 182,000 miles per second. If God sent that message while Jesus was here, that would mean, if we just got it, that would mean that God lives 2,000 light years away. So he lives on SETI Alpha 3. We've done it!
We found God!
We've done it! We found him!
We found him! Oh my goodness! Look at us!
I'm going to credit you. Listen. We had you. You were here as a guest host, so this is an in-time discovery. But you're the one. You're the one who just came up. You figured it out.
Thank you. Oh my God! You know what? Always knew I was going to be famous. I always knew.
Let's see. We got a couple others. Somebody made a comment about No, okay. I won't even go there. Go on to the, okay. So breaking news: In Time has found heaven. SETI Alpha, was it 5? I think. Yep. We'll double check. We'll get someone to double check. But given the speed of light, I think we're good. I'm comfortable with this decision.
You know what we'll do? We'll call my fellow South African comrade, Elon Musk. We'll have him send a roadster out that way with another mannequin in it.
Okay. I had said the speed of light is 82,000. It's actually, if I recall, I'm going to try to get this right. It's 186,262 miles per second. I rounded it, and because there is in fact a 2 in it, I transposed one of the digits. It's okay. I literally said, "Oh, it's 82." Oh my god! So we have a troll in those who's literally he corrected my 182,000 to 186,000, and then I just did this thing. It's 186 to 282. Oh Jesus. Okay. All right. It's gonna be one of those
Are we
days.
getting live fact check? Is that what
Yeah,
we're
I'm
doing?
being
Being
fact checked.
right
I mean,
now.
I had it. I mean, quite frankly, I may still have the speed of sound, and it's oh my god, I probably shouldn't even bother guessing that one. So 132 meters per second plus 0.6 times the temperature in degrees Celsius is going to be my guess. I'm probably way off. All right, it couldn't be that many meters per second because it's plus plus 0.6. How many meters per? Oh, it's 32. I think. Okay, I'm gonna. No, Jesus. Okay. So somebody's going to look it up. Jesus.
This
Okay.
is
Look
what
at that.
we
I just got
call.
derailed. I got derailed by one of my own
Yeah,
mods. So
this
troll.
is
All
what we
right.
call, oh, there goes a squirrel syndrome.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. That's it. That's it. That's I I am susceptible widely, as you're beginning to find out. Okay. So we have covered COVID. We've covered a gay marriage, and we have discovered the true location of heaven. So moving forward, some interesting stuff has been um, happening. This has been we did have another shooting yesterday, and we're gonna keep an eye on it. Every time there's a shooting nowadays, we worry about a huge explosion in the in riots, and so far we haven't had them. Yesterday was a tough one. Nothing happened last night above and beyond what I mean, we're still seeing protests and riots, but in Waukegan, Illinois, excuse me, an unarmed black teen was sitting in a car with his girlfriend. The police received a report of suspicious vehicle. The officers arrived. It's a little unclear as to what happened there, but it does look like at some point they told them to get out of the car. The girlfriend got out, saw that one of the officers had Waukegan. Thank you. One of the officers had a gun, and she said, "Why you got a gun?" At which point, apparently, he opened fire. At least that's what the reports are. We do know that there doesn't appear to have been any illegal activity. No gun was found in the car. Nothing's in that car that shouldn't have been there. So she's still in the hospital. She has an injury to her stomach and her hand. He was killed. So we're keeping an eye on that. We'll do breaking news if something serious erupts, but so far things have been the biggie is the election, and I think. Well, so the biggie. That's don't get me wrong. That's yeah. But what we're gonna try to cover right now is the shenanigans regarding the elections. So the Republican National Committee was putting up fake drop boxes, and they said that these were legit. That they were taking the voter registrations and ballots that were being dropped in there, and that they were turning them in. There's no evidence that they were or were not, to the best of my knowledge. I don't know if any turned up missing, but precisely because there's no chain of custody on those things, if somebody just drops it as a drop box, it's illegal to do what they were ordered to stop. They've said they're not going to stop doing it. But there has been just some massive. This country feels a little bit like it's coming unglued. The a man in Kannapolis, North Carolina, was arrested on charges that he was planning on carrying out acts of terrorism, including kidnapping and assassinating Joe Biden. Now, there's always people who are planning on killing somebody who are some political. It happens, but there seems to have been a spike in this. Either that, or there's been a spike in reporting of it. It's always been around, but this is something different. A Wichita man was also arrested for threatening to kidnap and kill the mayor of Wichita, Brandon Whipple, over his frustration over Wichita's mask ordinance. Now, we covered when Whipple actually did the mask, because when Whipple created the mask ordinance, there was a cartoon that was put out by one of their major newspapers that showed Whipple with a mask on and a Jewish Star of David on it, and then people getting into cattle cars and saying, please, when you get into the cattle cars, remember to put on your masks. Holy shit. Wow, I've been accused of some hyperbole, but so there was a assassination attempt or assassination plot to kill the Mayor Whipple, and the biggest one that got broken up recently was 14 men who allegedly were planning on kidnapping and murdering Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. They had staged dry runs. They had a plan. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to come to the door, knock on the door. This is what we're going to say. This is how we're going to transport them. This is where we're going to take them. This is where we're going to actually kill them. This is what we're going to. The whole plan. They had practiced every step of it, and were apparently reasonably close to attempting to execute this plan. And they got broken up. But that is now, in the last week, 3 plots that I'm aware of to assassinate major political major political people. You have to excuse me, I'm a little tired. To assassinate politicians. That's a little scary, and I do want to get your take on it. But actually, I might as well just to pile on, I suppose. You tack on to that. There is an increasing feeling of, well, for lack of a better word, I guess this impending sensation of violence, as the Proud Boys have now come out and said, at least some of them, there was an announcement that they would institute a civil war if Trump lost. They also got a hold of a Democratic voter registry in Florida and started emailing people in Florida. And this was Democrats in Florida. This is what they said. Hold on.
I believe that the thing in Florida was actually shown to be Iranian influence, was it not?
Well, no, that's another one. You're talking about a different one. The Iranians are trying to influence the election. They've been sending email threats. Excuse me, I think you're talking about a different one. You may be talking about the same one if I'm misinformed.
So the Iranians sent an email guised as actions by the Proud Boys to Democrats in Florida. They used a video that they made, and I guess it was relatively easy because there was a mix-up in the way that the video was made, and they were able to actually see in the video the coding that these Iranians had used. Now, there's no confirmation, of course, that these Iranians were air quotes tied to obviously the Iranian government, but they were Iranians, and this is what, to my understanding, this is what they were intending to do. Was they posed as the Proud Boys and were telling people not to vote or they would come and they would hurt them.
All right. Well, and that actually, what's interesting about that, okay, so yeah, I do have one of the emails. Now, my understanding was that this was from the Proud Boys, but it is easily possible that that was the understanding when these came out. So if that's been updated, that in fact it wasn't, because I do have and was going to mention, so the Iranians have been doing 2 things. They have successfully actually penetrated at least some election systems. I have no idea what that means, but I don't know what some election systems mean. I mean, local, state, I don't know. But and yes, they've been sending out spoofed emails to voters threatening them. Now, I also, so the Proud Boys, I was not aware was the same thing. It wouldn't surprise me, so I appreciate being brought up to date on that. That would be interesting because I don't know that they necessarily, they may, it's just like the Russians. You know, the Russians, I think, preferred Trump to Hillary. But in either case, just sowing discord was a win. If Hillary won, but strife within this nation had been stoked, that's a win for them. So that they won extra because they got Trump. This one, the email so the email, I'm going to read this email, but this may well have been, I guess, then the Iranians. That would actually make sense because as I was prepping for the show, I was copying this email down. I said, "Did no American speaks like this?" I should have. Wow. Okay. So it was vote for Trump or else. We are in possession of all your information. You are currently registered as a Democrat. We know this because we've gained access to the. Yeah, that's. I'm sorry. That does sound more like a foreigner than. Yeah. You will vote for Trump on election day, or we will come after you. Change your party affiliations so that we know. Yeah, that does sound like. I also have.
Yes, that was the Iranian, and they guised it to seem as though they were the Proud Boys. That's kind of over the top James Bond. Do as you're told, or else.
That's what I'm sitting there going, this must have been some really uneducated Proud Boys, but this makes a lot more sense to me. Well, I to be fair, there was the one line that said, I also have a bank account with $27 million and need your help to transfer the money. I am a prince and am hoping that you can. That should have been honestly I should have picked up on it from there, but my bad. All right. Well, good. Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to do a plug for just one other thing, which is I think that's why in general, and I mean I've spoken with people. I've spoken with people on the left who are for violence under certain circumstances. Everybody should be for violence under certain circumstances. I mean, World War II was one such circumstance. I'm sorry. You're not going to get around that. But in terms of violence against political opponents and so on and so forth, this is why I think what you said makes perfect sense and explains. Okay, so at this point, what you have now, I mean, imagine people on the left saying, okay, we need to arrest all the Proud Boys and we need to go to war with the Proud Boys because it's us versus them, or it's us or them if we don't. This is why you have to be skeptical. All right, well, there you go. Now you guys are watching me learn something new. All right, perfect. Well, good. So the Iranians are obviously interfering now, and I got caught up in it without even being one of the targets.
Yeah.
So that's a little scary.
That's the scary part with this. The disinformation is we are expected. We really have to stay so vigilant on so many things, and it's very easy to let stuff fall through the cracks, so to speak, where we end up carrying on, even the people who are vigilant end up carrying this disinformation that sows discord in our country. And there's a lot of things you brought up there, but they all kind of, and I think we can talk about each one individually, of course, but I think they all boil down to one thing that you said, is that we are farther apart now than we have been since the Civil War, and that is not by accident. It's by design. And this is where we get the people that say, oh, history. You talk about the guys that go and take history credits in high school and college, and you just kind of laugh. Oh, what are you going to be? A history teacher? But we don't learn it. We don't remember our history. So if we just kind of rewind back to the 1960s with JFK and Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon, and in between that we have I can't remember his name now. Gold member. That's James Bond, but again on
Goldwater, Barry Goldwater.
Gold. There we go. Gold member, Goldwater. Yeah, Barry Goldwater.
Okay.
And the Southern strategy Nixon bore out of Goldwater, and what these political operatives started to do was they started to hammer down on wedge issues. Right? There was no longer this concentration on what unified us; it's what divided us. And so they hammered home on things that the evangelicals, like abortion and the death penalty and drugs and things like that. And, it's true that if you take any two Americans and you analyze the beliefs, even nowadays, most of them are going to wind up believing in the majority of the same stuff, except these wedge issues. So our entire history in America for the last 50 years has just been political operatives hammering home wedge issues. And the reason they continue to do it is because it works. the politics of fear will get you elected. And they are now bearing the fruit of their good labors, which is a country that has been so divided for so long that we can't even recognize when we are being duped by not only our own leaders, but foreign leaders as well. Add on top of that this, racial divide that has, look, we've never apologized. This is the biggest thing with the racial stuff in the black community. We've never apologized. America has apologized for dropping bombs on Japan. We've apologized to Vietnamese. We've apologized to places that we didn't go in and help. We have apologized to Eastern Europe for the way we've treated them. We've apologized to Native Americans. We have never apologized for enslaving a group of people. Apologies go a long way. There was no healing under Barack Obama, right? We all thought that things were getting better. It was just simmering, right? It was just a slow boil under the surface, and all it needed was Donald Trump, and here we are. So we did it to ourselves. We really have. This is by design.
Well, and I think the problem is, and this is, you see this in capitalism in particular, because when the 2007 collapse happened, people, Alan Greenspan, who was a protege of Ayn Rand and had studied all her work and very much believed in objectivism and neoliberal economics, but he would testify. He said, I didn't understand how this could happen. I didn't see this happening. How is it that these companies actually did things that would injure themselves? We thought they'd always act in their own best interests, and yet here they didn't. Well, I think it was a problem between scope. The people running the businesses would operate in their own best interest, and when that was in the best interest of the long-term stability of the company, then everything would work out great. But when your best interests come from selling out the long-term futures of the country, then there's a problem. And I think especially with CEOs, there's a lot of that. If a CEO can goose the stocks, do really, really well, bail on a golden parachute, and then the company collapses, well, they get all the money, and but they'll probably even get hired again because they can blame someone else. There you go. I think in the U.S. we have a problem that if you want to get elected, it's a lot easier to get elected if you make a lot of short-term promises and create short-term division that gets your base energized and really wanting to fight for you, really wanting to help make sure you get in office. Now, this actually tends to undermine you when you get into office because you have to keep these promises, and if you don't end up doing all the things that they expect you to, they can turn on you real quick. But it's the politics of division are extraordinarily effective at getting people elected. They're very bad for the country long term, but you're only going to be around 8 years tops anyway. So find a way to get elected and let the damage be somebody else's problem. And I think you're right. I think really around the Goldwater eras, especially when that kind of thing started, and it worked. Rove was reasonably good at that too. Rove had other tactics too, but they all undermined the long-term stability of the country for short-term gains, and we are reaching a tipping point with it. Well, I think we've already passed the tipping point. We're reaching a crisis point where whatever's happening now, if it's not fixed somehow, and I don't know what that looks like, but I think we're going to enter a national crisis of some kind. There are people who are very upset right now. It sounds like you're about to say something, so
yeah, well, I agree with what you said. We are, I think, at a tipping point, and these things tend to seem to happen in America reasonably or fairly often, which is kind of off-putting. But you brought up Karl Rove, and of course, the Bush administration really perfected this. I mean, we had Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, and Karl Rove. I mean, add in any one talk show host, Rush Limbaugh, and you have the four horsemen of the apocalypse right there. It's very easy to divide people. It really is. You find that one thing that can just divide them, and it's it becomes an us versus them mentality. And there's so many great quotes that talk about things. It's in our movies. It's always been in our movies. We have people on the right, demonize Hollywood, but Hollywood has been warning us about this very thing for a very long time. I mean, think back to the American president, right, with Michael Douglas. And in the very end, he says that how do you elect someone? You get a bunch of middle-aged, middle-class, white suburban people who long easier time, and you pick out an enemy and you say that's who's to blame for your problems, and you call them names and you tell them that you're going to attack them and put them down. Right? You win an election, but what do you want to be president of? The scorched earth? Because there's eventually there's just nothing left except bodies and fire. Blaming common people for this, and the left is responsible for this. Let's not kid ourselves here. A coal miner in West Virginia is too busy mining coal and trying to put food on his table than to worry about the politics of the left or the right. He just goes and checks the box for the guy that he thinks he wants to have a beer with. And so I don't blame them because they are victims. So we blame how could they do this? How could they vote for Donald Trump? How could they vote against their own interests? Well, they're too busy trying to put food on their table. So stop blaming them because they're just victims as well. And this is why we have the voter suppression that we've got going on right now. The Republican Party knows very well that if everybody voted, there would be no Republican representatives anymore. There would be no Republican president. And so we see this disenfranchisement of voters. It's intentional because they see the prevailing winds. The prevailing winds are universal health care and social rights and, to an extent, social democracy, and how do we avoid that? We disenfranchise voters. It doesn't surprise me, although I will say that I think a lot of it is just a bit of over-reporting. We've got COVID, we've got a pandemic going on, so of course there's more mail-in votes, there's a lot more of them, so there's going to be a lot more opportunity for just human error, right? The problem is that we are still operating. This show operates for an hour to 2 hours at a time, a couple days a week, and it hits a couple subjects, and we just kind of do blow-by-blows. But Fox and CNN and MSNBC, these are 24-hour multimedia simulcasts.
Yeah.
And so they have to fill air. They have to fill airtime. So a guy that made a mistake and misfiled 9 ballots ends up becoming an hour talk about whether or not it was voter fraud or something like that when it wasn't. And then, of course, the conspiracy mills go, they're trying to suppress Republican votes in Pennsylvania. They're trying to suppress, the thing in California that you brought up, honestly, it doesn't make any sense to me. Why would Republicans want to suppress votes in California? No Republican is going to win California. It'd be like a Democrat trying to suppress votes in Kentucky. I don't care how many of those votes you suppress. You're not winning Kentucky as a Democrat. So I don't think it's most of this is fraud. I think the major bit of suppression is going on in Florida, Pennsylvania, to an extent Texas, in the southern states with just the blatant disenfranchisement. Passing a law that says that felons can vote and then saying, oh, but no, only if you pay this money. So adding a poll tax onto it, kicking voters off the roll 2 months before open registration happens, things like that.
That was, sorry, I was trying to think. There was a line in the first season of The Newsroom, Jeff Daniels, and he was talking about the disenfranchisement of a voter, and something, I want to say Cynthia Brown, but I think I'm confusing that with Sylvia Brown, the psychic. But you brought up an interesting point, which was if every American voted, based on what I see of the demographics, it strikes me that Republicans would have a very hard time staying in office if every single American voted. So a lot are lost to voter ID. That's why the voter ID is extraordinarily important to, I don't want to say that that's why it's important to Republican governors and or in Republican districts, but I do see a correlation that in the districts where conservatives are in charge, and there's a high minority um, uh, population that can be disenfranchised, then yes, voter ID, polls closing early, any number of other things all of a sudden becomes an issue. So I'm I'm concerned about that. I think you bring up a good point about over-reporting. So the other two things I wanted to bring up was the one, there was just a tenant who would, or it's not a tenant, a landlord who would sent to all his tenants, if you vote for Trump, I'm going to have to double. Sorry, if you vote for Biden and Biden wins, I'm going to have to double all your rent. And if Trump wins, I won't have to change rent for another 2 years, which was an interesting one. And you're right. I mean, it's sort of availability bias. I don't know how long these have been around, and maybe it's just getting reported over, but it certainly does feel like there's a lot of pressure being applied. The other one that I wanted to do was, so the White House is now discussing slashing coronavirus funding, HIV treatment funding, newborn screenings, and other social programs in cities that Trump has labeled anarchist cities. Any idea which cities those may be?
Any city that's being run by a Democrat?
New York,
New York
Portland.
City,
Yeah.
Seattle.
Seattle, you got it, Seattle. So he is now saying he's going to cut funding to all of these cities. Now, HIV programs, the coronavirus relief programs, newborn screenings, this isn't going to affect the governors. This isn't going to affect the leadership. This is social programs to help save American lives. But they're cutting it in cities that they don't like.
Isn't this the
Don't
party?
get me. What?
Isn't this the pro-life party? And yet again, we find them cutting money for programs that support life. How ironic!
Well, no, I think somebody said that they're basically they're for life until birth. Once you're born, you're on your own. Oh, Jesus. So the other thing, Trump has now also refused to give California disaster relief. They have they have had six wildfires, including the largest, the Central California wildfire, which is the largest one in state history. And Trump is saying that the federal government will not assist them. Could there be valid reasons? Yes, but in general, the New Orleans got help after Katrina. Everybody got it. It did get delayed, admittedly. New York got help
there's
after.
No valid reasons.
Yeah. So
don't you know, Nick? It's about the exploding trees and the leaves on the ground. If you just rake the leaves.
Well, it's because they refuse to rake the leaves.
Never mind the fact that the majority of these fires have occurred on federal land.
Yes.
Let's not forget that the majority of this country is owned by the federal government. Right, 6/10 of this country is owned by the federal government, and so when anything happens, odds are you got a good chance it's happening on federal land. Donald Trump is no longer going to send money to California to put out fires on federally maintained land. I mean, this man is the perfect example of what it means to fail upwards.
I like that one. I haven't. Yeah, that's a yeah. Well, I do think the last thing I think I'm going to say. I feel like Well, the last thing I wanted to there's the Times has been covering a lot of stuff about his taxes, and he's going to have, if I recall, they're looking about $700 million due to foreign governments coming out pretty soon. When not all to foreign governments. Those are the bills. Some of it is to foreign governments. Debts that he's going to have due. It looks like he's had a lot of schemes to avoid taxes. We know he's been under audit for a while, and at first I had just sort of thought, okay, it's them being lazy and they're just not fulfilling it. But according to the New York Times, he's been under audit because he's really been doing some crooked shit, and they want to get it right. And it looks like they've got him on a lot of shit. And the New York Times has been following this, and it feels a little bit like the Watergate days, where every couple of weeks something new would come out, and they all seemed reasonably small by themselves. Well, okay, two burglars, got busted at a thing. Okay, we found there were a couple other burglars there. they've been found. Oh, they testified. Oh, their lawyer, it turns out, is some big hotshot from Washington. Why do they have a Washington lawyer? Well, okay, fine. And it's like, and then it's just, but you started to tally all this stuff up, and you're like, there are some real serious problems. I think he is in serious, serious trouble once he gets out of office. Unless I don't know what your read is on this, but I thought he was going to get hooked on Trump University, and he didn't. But I read the manual to that thing, and that was a book on how to rip people off.
So this is difficult for me because I'm unsure how I feel about jailing presidents. I really am. I am of the opinion that one of the reasons Donald Trump ran for president is because he knew he was in tough hot shit, so to speak. And mind kind of blank there for a minute. To my knowledge, Donald Trump is under audit. The primary thing that he's under audit for is $73 million in deductions that he has claimed. He had claimed a $73 million deduction on his taxes. And so, look, he's a con man. He's a mobster. Yes, there are shady deals. Yes, he's probably just, if he was not the president of the United States, I would honestly expect, Al Capone type treatment for this. But I'm just unsure what the legalities of this are at this point. And I'm also very wary because what is he doing with the IRS right now, with his power as the executive? What is he doing? Making stuff go away? Is stuff disappearing? Is the IRS performing its duty and its function? Is the Secret Service doing its duty and its function to investigate these things? I think if he does not win the presidency, I think he is in some serious legal jeopardy, and it's just about who has the balls to arrest or sue a former president of the United States. And I'm sure there's an attorney out there that's willing to do it, a district attorney or a state. Yeah, I'm sure there's something out there.
The Southern District. Yeah.
And then, of course, odds are, look, the man eats cheeseburgers that's all he eats, right? And he's 74 years old, so, by the time this actually would show up in front of a court, let's be honest, vis-a-vis my progeny.
Well, who may also be in. Well, I think while he's sitting president, I don't think there's much you can do, but that may be coming to an end soon. And so, speaking of, what I'd like to do is just quickly, we're going to have on Stephen Shives. We're going to have him on Monday. We're going to Monday, I think it's 9 p.m. We're going to be discussing raising secular children. Not raising. Sorry, that was the other. Wow, I'm tired. Excuse me. No, we're going to be discussing. Are atheists inherently more rational than theists? And you're going to be joining us for that one, if I recall.
Yes, I am, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun conversation.
I am too. I think that's going to be a great. Then for the election coverage, we're going to start at 6 p.m. We are going to have Mr. Oh, hold on one second. We're going to have. Stephen Shives, he'll be back for that. We're also going to have on Mr. Nate Brody, Christopher Mouty, and then we are going to have Alex Botten and Jim Gardner from formerly from Fundamentally Flawed. I have no doubt you will be making an appearance as well. We'd certainly love to have you come by. It's going to be a long night, so I think we may be swapping. That's the roster for starting out. So I'm sure people are going to be coming and going. And then the other thing is, I will confess some apprehension as to what happens if and when the numbers start to look very strongly in one direction or another. Yes.
I have been obviously looking at polls, and I think there is cause for concern. I know that there's been a lot of early voting, but there were a lot of polls released yesterday and today. 538 and Real Clear Politics have correlated these things, and the numbers are moving in Trump's favor. We are seeing the same kind of shift that we saw in 2016. Now, the polls are supposed to be more accurate this go around, but there have been several polls released that show Trump is tie or slightly ahead in several battleground states, including states that Joe Biden needs to win, including Pennsylvania and North Carolina. So this is not by any stretch of the imagination a sure thing for Joe Biden. It absolutely could go either way. I believe that Joe Biden obviously has more paths forward, but I feel as though Joe Biden is losing a little bit of momentum here in the last stretch. I think Donald Trump had a very strong debate performance yesterday compared to what he did the first go around. I think that may have reassured some independent voters. So I think anybody that is just assuming that Joe Biden is going to walk to victory on November 3rd is counting the chickens long before they catch. This could very easily turn into another 4 years for Donald Trump and a disaster for the American people if we are not absolutely vigilant.
I unfortunately share your concern. So what we're going to do is we're going to be covering it just the entire election. We're gonna have the numbers as they come in, and we're going to be talking about what we see happening, how things appear to be moving forward. And if it turns out that my concern is whoever wins, that there could be significant violence later in the night. And that things could start to head south. So we're going to basically start on in time. We're going to be watching the results, and then with any luck, whatever happens, we'll be able to retire by 4 a.m. in the morning, maybe with an idea of who won. And if we can do that, great. But if I think we're also going to keep an eye on what's going on in the rest of the state, rest of the country, because I'm concerned. I'm concerned that the rhetoric that Trump has been fomenting, combined with just sort of a lot of hostility and anger from both sides out there.
I think that I know there's a concern that we won't know the results on November 3rd, and that could very well be the case. But I think we'll have good indicators because there are bellwether states. So North Carolina counts its votes fairly quickly. Pennsylvania counts its votes fairly quickly. Kansas and Mississippi count their votes fairly quickly. Wisconsin and Minnesota count their votes very quickly. So we will have results on November 3rd for North Carolina. We will have results on November 3rd for Virginia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, Arizona, California. We will have results for these places. So if we watch the bellwether states, I'm pretty sure, I think we'll have a pretty good idea. And I share your concern for the violence that could erupt. I'm more concerned, obviously, with violence erupting if Trump loses than I am if Biden wins, which is just, a sad kind of fact. Left violence. Leftists don't really show up to stop violence, it seems. Antifa, or people that have anti-fascist ideology, tend to just kind of want to knock Proud Boys and other, Nazis around. They don't really want to seem to stop much of anything. On the other hand, there are many right-wing, militias and groups that enjoy starting events. I'm not afraid to go to jail. So I'm very concerned about what happens if Trump loses, not so much Biden wins.
I share a disproportionate concern on one side over the other. I do think it's, at least in this country, I don't know historically, but at present, the far right is more militant and proudly so more than I think the far left tends to be. Greenpeace is, in fact, as I recall, a registered terrorist organization, but nonetheless, I'm not worried about Greenpeace. So, all right, well, what I'm going to do, we're going to head off. I'm going to be in the Discord in about 5 minutes. So if anybody wants to join us, Vox, if you have a few minutes and you want to join us in the Discord, we would love to see you there. But otherwise,
Absolutely, I will.
Perfect. Then what we're going to do, so on Monday, we're going to have Stephen Shives for atheists, more or less, or are they more rational than theists? And then full election coverage starting election day at 6 p.m. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Vox, for coming. And I look forward to, definitely get your notifications and hit the like and subscribe button. But if you want to get notifications of future shows, do that. And come on in and join us on the Discord. Thank you all. And we're back. Hold on. Sorry, there was a little technical issue
That was
there.
good.
Yeah, that was that. Well, hold on a sec, because we're actually back. The stream didn't go quite to the end there. It ended up going to. Yeah, I'm gonna send it to the end. I do apologize. That's what happens when you hit the wrong button. Night all.